afternoon and good evening to everyone joining us today. Welcome to those of you here with us at the World Bank headquarters in Washington, D.C., and joining us from across the globe via World Bank Live. My name is Mercedes Stickler, and I'm a Senior Land Administration Specialist at the World Bank and the team leader for the World Bank Land Conference. I am so pleased to welcome you here today to this opening session for the 2025 World Bank Land Conference. The World Bank Land Conference is the premier global forum for the land sector. For over 20 years, we have been bringing together participants from governments, development partners, civil society, academia, and the private sector to showcase research, discuss technical issues and good practice, and inform investments and policy dialogue to strengthen land systems worldwide for sustainable development and economic growth. This year's Land Conference features 57 sessions on a variety of topics, including e-governance, standards, urbanization, land management, women's rights, and energy, the topic of today's opening session, which will highlight how land systems create jobs and unlock the future of energy. We are thrilled to have with us here today Mr. Rohitesh Talwan, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the International Council on Mining and Metals, the ICMM, to deliver the keynote remarks to kick off this year's World Bank Land Conference. Ro leads the council of 24 CEOs of the world's largest mining and metals companies in voluntary leadership actions that raise the standard on responsible mining. Under his leadership, the ICMM has undertaken landmark commitments and action on sustainable development issues, including the first industry-wide commitment to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions, the first collective commitment on nature-positive mining, and significant steps towards the transparency of the industry's contributions and performance, including on tax and contract disclosure. He also led the update of its position statement on Indigenous people, representing a landmark industry commitment to respecting Indigenous peoples' rights and achieving agreement in relation to mining projects on their land. After Ro's keynote remarks, he will be joined on stage by Ms. Hindu Umaru Ibrahim, the Vice Chair of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and Ms. Jennifer Lakey, the Global Director for Energy at the World Resources Institute, for a multi-stakeholder discussion moderated by Dr. Dimitrios Papatanasiou, the Global Director for Energy and Extractives at the World Bank. Their discussion will focus on how the private sector, governments, local landholders, and civil society can work together to advance socially responsible and environmentally sustainable mining investments that unlock jobs, energy access, and economic growth. But first, over to you, Ro.
Thank you, Mercedes, and good morning, everybody. I'm genuinely so honored and humbled to be with you, especially as I understand that it's the first time in the 20 years of this extraordinary event that somebody from the private sector has occupied this space. So I'm truly grateful, thank you, and I'm also so sorry that I can't be with you in person. Now, given that, the least I owe you is honesty. And the honest truth is the following, which is that despite many examples on the positive side, the mining industry has not always treated land with the respect and care that it deserves. Saying this, colleagues, does not make me popular with some in the industry that I proudly represent. But let us remember that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. And so today, I want to recognize and explore the reasons for the good, the bad, and the ugly outcomes for land and its people, plants, and animals as a result of mining. More importantly, I want to share with you why I'm more hopeful than ever of a bright future with decent jobs and shared prosperity on a healthy, thriving planet. Let me start, colleagues, with two obvious facts. The first is that our lives are wholly dependent on metals and minerals. From our homes, cars, and gadgets, to bridges, roads, and energy systems. Minerals are the backbone of almost everything we touch, see, and feel. The second is that they come from the land. Some, like diamonds, can lie on its surface. Others, like gold and copper, run deep into the Earth's core. In essence, if it isn't grown, then it is mined, and land is the source of both. This explains why we have an estimated 25,000 mining companies operating today, producing the vital commodities that make our lives possible. And it also explains why in the coming decades, we will need hundreds of new mines to supply the world with critical minerals for the energy transition. What it does not explain is why for each one of the 25,000 active mines, there are an estimated 6 abandoned or orphaned mines, or why an estimated 23 million people live on land contaminated by metal mining, or why 1 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface is covered in mine waste. Friends, how and why, in producing these commodities, have we undermined the health of land, the very source of minerals and of life? And more importantly, what can we learn from the past to ensure that the coming wave of growth in mining enables a safe, just, and sustainable planet? Here are my 3 key lessons for building that future, and inspiring, life-affirming, hopeful examples of each. First, just because we can does not mean we should. Technology has turned mining into modern-day industrial magic. We can literally move mountains and shift the course of ancient rivers. But should we? In many cases, the answer will be yes, because all things considered, as a society, we may reach consensus that the need for commodities and the opportunity for host countries to prosper, grow, and develop means that mining should go ahead with the least possible disruption to land, impacted people, and nature. In other cases, the answer must be no, because the price or risk is simply too high. This is why ICMM members have a commitment for over 2 decades to not mine or operate in World Heritage Sites. These are places where the risk is simply too high, no matter how rich the resource or how great the need. Further, if an ICMM member does operate close to such a site, they're committed to doing so only if their operations do not unduly affect the attributes of that site. In some cases, the answer of whether we should mine can be a yes and. This is why ICMM members made a landmark commitment last year to contribute to nature positive outcomes. We have committed to protecting and preserving nature at our mine sites, in the landscapes in which we operate, through our supply chains, and across the wider economy, grounded in a cornerstone commitment to ensure no loss of biodiversity at all our sites. The spirit of this commitment has seen companies like Vale protect 11 hectares of land for every 1 hectare disturbed by mining, and why Anglo American has made thousands of data points on biodiversity using leading eDNA techniques publicly available to advance our collective research and understanding of nature, and why Teck Resources protects one of the most precious and fragile ecosystems in the country of their flagship new mine, Quebrada Blanca. These and countless other actions of ICMM members show how it is possible to mine in harmony with land and nature. The second lesson, colleagues, from the past and a principle for the future is that not everything of value has a price. Land is indispensable and often a major cost in mining, and so its price is closely scrutinized and debated, as it should be. In doing so, however, we must never lose sight of the intangible value of land, especially from the perspective of those who often don't have a voice around the financial table. This is why in 2024, ICMM members reinforced their commitment to respecting the rights of Indigenous people. Through our updated position statement, we committed to obtaining agreement Gorge 2020 during blasting activities for iron ore mining was a watershed moment for a much needed recalibration of the relationship between the mining industry and indigenous people. While nothing can bring the ancient and invaluable cultural heritage back, the company responsible, Rio Tinto, has sought to drive change. For instance, at its Western Range mine in Australia, the company has formed a pioneering co-management agreement with indigenous communities, which will see joint decision-making in key areas, including environmental management and post-mine transitions. This, colleagues, links to the third lesson and principle for the future, which is that land thrives when people thrive, and vice versa. When mines are operated responsibly, their positive impacts in this regard are extraordinary. In 2024 alone, the 24 company members of ICMM directly supported over 600,000 jobs between them, and potentially millions more indirectly. Now, behind these extraordinary numbers are lives transformed, children educated, and homes built. The $41 billion in wages and over $200 billion spent with suppliers show the power of responsible mining to drive jobs, prosperity, and development. The industry is often the backbone of the development of host countries. In the last 10 years, for every $1 of profit that ICMM members made, they returned 36 cents to host countries in corporate income tax and royalty. From Chile to Botswana, you can trace the breakaway growth of economies to responsible mineral-led development. But friends, the story is less positive when it comes to periods post-mining. Too many mines were designed and operated without any plan for the land or host community after the minerals have been extracted, leaving behind holes in the ground and hollowed out communities. Governments and the industry share accountability for these failures, and we must do better for the estimated 1,000 mines that are due to close in the next decade. To support this, I'm very pleased to use this special platform today to announce the launch of the critical resource. ICMM today has published a handbook on multi-stakeholder approaches to socio-economic transitions in mining. It provides a practical step-by-step guide on how a whole of society approach is both necessary and possible to ensure healthy and thriving communities through every stage of mining. I encourage you all to read, use, and share this widely. An inspiring example of this approach comes from the Mpumalanga province of South Africa, a country and province that is very rich in coal, but with among the highest rates of unemployment and inequality in the world. So when ICMM member Glencore was planning for the closure of the mine in line with its commitment to responsibly run down its coal production, it took a creative approach to caring not just for the land, but for the people who remain there long after the mine has closed. And so they partnered with Kellogg's, the cornflakes producer, to create sustainable rural livelihoods through wheat cultivation. What's more, they found that the responsible management of water resources meant that the wheat produced had higher than normal levels of zinc, which of course helps counter the scourge of childhood malnutrition from zinc deficiency. It's a nice little reminder of our potential the next time you take a bite of your cornflakes. Colleagues, in closing, let me return to the basics. Land is the source of life, including the minerals our world depends on. Caring for it is not only our duty and obligation as a species, but also good for our businesses. We have many examples of responsible mining, but far too many failures that have harmed the land, its people, the more than human species who we share this planet with. So, as we look to the future, by remembering that just because we can doesn't mean we should. Not everything of value has a price, and that land thrives when people thrive, we can ensure that a common heritage of land is the enduring source of our shared prosperity. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening if you're connecting from Asia. Good morning to everyone here in Washington. We have a full Preston auditorium, and I know there is quite a number of people on the overflow room as well. So without further ado, let me invite here to the stage our two panelists who haven't been introduced yet. And let me start with Ms. Hindu Umaru Ibrahim, who is Vice Chair for the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Hindu, please come on stage. And let me also invite Jennifer Lake, who is the Global Director for the World Resources Institute at the Polski Center for the Global Energy Transition. Just a few words, if I may, for both of them so that you know how they fit in this event. And let me start with Hindu, who was telling me just earlier that she is from the Mbororo people, which is a pastoralist people in Chad, in Africa. And she was telling me that she has cousins in almost 5 different countries in Africa, and apparently here in Maryland as well. And she has, of course, a really important role of bringing the voice of indigenous people. She has been working on these issues since she was very young, and she has been participating and representing indigenous peoples in various UN forums, including in the late climate change negotiations. So we're really looking forward to hear from Hindu, and she advised me earlier that she wants to be able to jump in and interrupt people when they say something that she feels needs to be commented on. And Jennifer, she's with the World Resources Institute. She has a long career in the energy sector and deep experience in understanding how to do the business side of it as well as the policy side. So Jennifer, thank you for calling us. And Rohites, thank you very much for your keynote. I really appreciated that you started off by, as you said, being honest about the past and the challenges of bringing mining to giving us the metals and the minerals that the world needs as we go ahead with energy transition and as the world grows and develops. And if I may, I would like to start off with a question for you. Part of what the challenge has always been is that we know many of the countries where we work in, they have an enormous wealth of metals, mines. The potential to develop is sitting in the earth there. And of course, what we're all striving for is to make sure that we find a way that this development is happening responsibly. And of course, responsibility is a big, big word. And at the same time, we want to make sure that when we do that, we manage risks, as you said, and we do it in the best possible way. So let me start by asking you, what is it that you find that your members are looking for in countries when they find opportunities to develop? What are the main principles? And I would like to ask you also, how do their investors think about it? And how do investors in the big mining companies hold them accountable to behave responsibly? And if you have any ideas and any advice about us in the World Bank Group on how we can be the right facilitator, the right mediator if needed, so that we can get development going responsibly, realize the economic growth, but make sure that this is done in the right way.
Dimitrios, thank you so much. It's a big question to answer to you because, after all, it is the World Bank that has, for so many decades, been that standard of good practice for both governments and companies to make sure that development is brought to the host countries where these mineral resources are found. But as you know, Dimitrios, that has too often remained an empty promise for places where mining has occurred. When you ask me what companies at least are seeking, I think what they're seeking are 2 main things. One is an environment which allows them to make the long-term investment decisions that mining is all about. You know, a mine can last for 200 years or more, we have examples of mines that are operating today that are that old. But at the minimum, you're looking at least a couple of decades for a mine. And so companies need to know that when looking at investment, the rules of the game, as it were, are both visible and predictable so that there aren't changes unanticipated down the line. That's the first thing. But honestly, Demetrius, if you're a responsible mining company, that's not enough for you. The second thing you should be looking for is a commitment on the part of that government to partner with you to adopt, embrace, and support the highest standards of responsible mining. One thing, Dimitrios, that's very core to the ICMM membership proposition is that if a company follows a particular standard in one part of the world, and they go to a different part of the world where the regulatory level is lower than what they follow elsewhere, there is no justification or basis for lowering it to match the place in which you're now operating. Being a responsible operator means operating to the best standard no matter where you operate. And in doing so, Dimitrios, I believe that's the way to ensuring that people benefit from resource extraction and development.
Thank you very much, Rohitesh. Let me ask Jennifer, who has very kindly helped me with my water here. Jennifer, we know that the planet is perilously close to hitting targets, increasing temperatures, and the only way to deal with that while still maintaining economic growth is that we have to find ways to accelerate clean energy alternatives around the world. And clean energy alternatives in most places, and I'm looking at the picture that we have here in the land conference, we see rows and rows of solar panels. We know that they need land. So the whole energy transition needs the right responsible development of mining so that we get the materials for the equipment and that we need for clean energy investments. And at the same time, we can see that itself, the investments of clean energy, especially because solar and wind are so much dispersed, they need land as well. So in your work at WRI, you have thought a lot about how do we do this right, how we do it in a sustainable manner, and how do we bring financing in this sector. So what can you enlighten us and share that some good practices? What are your findings on this work?
Well, thank you. And it's wonderful to be here with you all. I want to start with a few statistics. As you noted, the energy transition is going to be a land and people transition. The expansion of mining and energy development is going to account, and by some estimates, for up to 80% of all projected expansion into natural lands. And that is indeed a very significant fat number. The sectors on energy are playing an outsized role in what will happen with land. And increased conflict between industrial development, industrialization, urbanization, local needs, and agriculture are occurring already today. Our government and planning institutional decision-making approaches are inadequate for helping us through this. The energy sector, as a sector, lags in thinking through how to interact very significant ways that are using the most modern, the most practical tools. And that includes looking at things like AI, looking at digital and data sources, and thinking about how governments and institutions like multilateral development banks can create co-investment platforms in order to overcome some of these challenges. When we think about, for example, this solar array, panel, solar farm that you have on the conference website here, there is dramatic new opportunities to think about intensification of solar with agriculture to enable an improved agrivoltaics approach to land management. Similarly, as we think about the mining and the minerals space, the opportunities associated with managing for recycling, reuse, upgrading, and reskilling are essential for a durable transition for both energy and people, as well as land. I was very struck by the announcement just now from ICMM about the handbook, and I hope that there will be opportunities to think more strategically about land systems co-investment through mining to local communities in order to ensure that we are thinking about a clean, abundant, affordable, and reliable energy future that includes mining at the fore.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Hindu, let me turn to you now. I hear there's a lot of good intentions, and Rohit has started with an acknowledgement that things in the past have not always been rosy. And our estimates are that a quarter of the land in the world is with indigenous people. And we estimate that about half, maybe up to 80% of the metals and minerals that we need for the energy transition is one way or the other associated or present in lands that indigenous peoples have right on. So we have this forceful demand to make sure that we can develop alternative energy systems. I think there's a lot of good intention about doing things right, but I would like to hear from you. How do indigenous people feel that pressure? How do indigenous people think as they look into, in the 21st century, the pressures of climate change, all these demands for development on their lands? What is your perspective on that?
Thank you very much. Ombali Jam, Onyali Jam. It's really a great pleasure to be with you here. And thank you, Mercedes, really for this event and focusing in the what's happening right now, actually, for all of us. So, well, let me start by one part of your questions. Indigenous peoples are the most impacted by climate change. Of course, because our land territories are always the one who are getting those impacts. When it is a flood, for us, it is not only the water, it is the flood that is washing our land. When there is a drought, it's not only drying the land, it is drying our home. When there is fire, it is not burning only the forest that we can watch in the TV. It is burning our home, our knowledge, all the rest of the species. So when we wanted to fight climate change, of course, we all agree we have to move from the fossil fuel to the renewable. And indigenous peoples fighted for that for years. Thanks at the COP28, we get this decision to move out from the fossil fuel. But of course, we need a just transitions. And I wanted to put a big, heavy lift in the just. We need a just, equitable, inclusive transitions. We cannot repeat the past mistake to say we discover a solution that is going to harm the people. So indigenous peoples protect the land, the biodiversity, but the most diverse land that we are living on it. So those areas is a high spot biodiversity. It's not going to be used on the name of the solution to destroy them. And again, we say like, oops, we're going back again to the first solution that we have. So it needs to be constructed from now in a better way, fair way that can respect the principles of indigenous peoples. And what is those principles? Every action have to be right-based approach. So the just transitions have to be a right-based approach. It have to respect the indigenous people's rights. And to respect it, there is a big need of recognition of indigenous people's land and territories. Land tenure is the most important when we wanted to talk about the solutions. Secondly, we have to recognize the collective land right. It's not individuals, because we are living collectively. And one of the examples is like, okay, let's go and talk to the indigenous peoples and come back. Like, no, not talk with them. Make a process of the free, prior, and informed consent. And it is the process that can take years. For example, the pastoralists, like my people, when we move from one place to another one, when they come to this consultation, we are not there. They have to come back. They have to come back again and again to make it inclusive for everyone, to do not just to come and go away. And we need a legislations that can really ensure those land rights are protected in order to do these just equitable and sure transitions. And finally, the just transitions we've learned for indigenous peoples is to be inclusive for all the regions. Because when we do about these just transitions, we just start talking about, the bigger countries, the bigger cities that are not taken into consideration. The developing nations, the indigenous peoples who are living in the rural areas, or those who are pastoralists. So it has to be equitable, just, inclusive, to be responsible for everyone, and to be just for the planet and the people.
So let me, as we go in the second stage of our conversation, I think what we're looking for is how can we make sure that, as you said, indigenous peoples are indeed threatened by climate change and they can be very vulnerable. At the same time, we have the reality that to move the world forward, we have to find the right way so that investment can happen in the land of indigenous people. And you correctly said that this needs to be inclusive, it has to be done right. I understand that just recently at the 24th session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, you presented a study on the rights of indigenous people in the context of critical minerals and the just transition. Could you share with us what are the key findings on this study, and what do you feel needs to be in place a little bit more concretely so that we can make sure that indigenous peoples are treated fairly?
Absolutely. Firstly, I invite all of you to read the study. It is in the UN website in all the 6 languages. And the reason that I did this study, last year as indigenous peoples, we organized an Indigenous Peoples Summit on just transition and critical mineral, because we wanted to go ahead and ask the company, the government, the UN, all the financial institutions that you have to do it right this time. And we are giving you the way of doing it. And of course, I also get inspired with the UNSG high-level panel on the critical minerals and just transitions. And then I went to dive deep to do this study. But what you have to return from this study, there are responsibility of every single sectors. Firstly, the government. The government have the huge responsibility to design a right policies, legislations that can recognize the indigenous people rights, to respect it. But the legislation also who can allow the private sectors to be in their own responsibility of consulting indigenous peoples. And they have to create a mechanism of the access and benefit sharing. When indigenous peoples accept, and when it is touching their land, there is need of the access and benefit sharing of indigenous peoples who have to be ensured. But the government also have to be responsible of, after how many years of these extractions, what will be the responsibility vis-a-vis to the nature? Because it's not only you come, you get it, and you go away. You have to restore, you have to protect this land for the upcoming generation. And indigenous peoples talk about the 7 upcoming generation. Don't talk about 10 years or 50 years. But 7 upcoming generation have to come back and live in this land. But of course, the private sectors. But the mining initiative like ICMM, yes, you are doing your best. We are not asking you to do your best. We are asking you to do the right. So you have to include the indigenous peoples' declaration on the right. So those UN DRIP have to be considered into the statement, not into the back of it. But I do not see it in the statement, and I'm happy that we discuss around that, and I hope in your next statement, the indigenous people right can be in front, not in the back. And you have to ensure the concept of the FPIC. And the study show it also, how the UN agencies, the financial institutions can ensure the indigenous people's rights are upheld. So we can get our voices there. Not someone else can speak on our behalf. We have to speak for ourselves. And the institutions must have us not in a panel, but in their own board members. When you are not in the board, you're just discussing with the CEO. The CEO is reporting back to the board. No. We wanted to be in the board of all these companies and in all these institutions who are discussing about the critical minerals and just transition. Then we can contribute in a right way. So the study really showed a right way of how we can do the just transitions in an equitable way, inclusive way that can be very respectful. I invite you to read it, and I hope you will enjoy it. And you can find indigenous peoples as experts.
Thank you very much, Hindu. Let me, Jennifer, you said earlier that getting the communities along when we're making investments is key. Are there examples? Do we know where this has worked? Are there any good cases where we can point out and say that, yes, this is a place where things appear to have been done right, and this contributes to the sustainability of the projects?
Well, I think there is certainly a lot of individual case studies. I actually want to raise this up, though, one level to the systems, because I think that what we have identified is that it is at the system level. Any individual project can do, I think, a good job, a solid job of engaging with local communities, of engaging around resources, around jobs, and around ensuring that there are safety improvements, that we're not taking advantage of the community as and in creating risks. But at a systems level, we are lacking the ability to manage at a landscape level. That landscape level then also needs to be defined with local communities. I think part of our problem as a community of planners, investors, and project developers is that we look within the boundaries of the site that we are developing. The fact of development, however, is that you have all kinds of unanticipated consequences. We did a review of illegal mining in the Amazon, for example. And what we found in many cases, which the World Bank has substantiated many times, is that there is an economic activity that is a driver that may or may not have originated with the mining sector. The economic driver could have been a road. It could have been some other type of an established economic activity, but it invites in the broader opportunities for illegal mining and illegal activity. In that Latin American study, where it was multi-country, but all within the Amazon, it was very clear that the landscape level, cross-country boundaries, and cross-indigenous ownership levels was required, right? You have your owners and you have your affected communities who may not be owners, who may be using that land and may be engaged in economic activities that are more nomadic or and not recognized, in fact, even within their governments. So I do think that the opportunity to do landscape level planning is essential. Free, prior, and informed consent is a prerequisite as well. But looking together at where agriculture, where industry, what are can be located, where are the resources, and how do you really build back the ecosystems, and making that a priority with local communities can also then be instructive with regards to the go and no-go zones. I mean, Ro mentioned, for example, that you do have to have a recognition of some of the ecological significance or cultural significances of specific land areas. So looking at that integration of people, nature, and the economy is essential. But we need to do that beyond the project. And I think that's where our institutions are most challenged.
So I've been listening very carefully to what you said about doing the landscape planning from the beginning, thinking through what happens at the end of an operation, which might happen decades later. And Hindu indeed said that we have to think 7 generations into the future, which I think fits very well with being responsible for the now and being responsible for our children, our grandchildren, our grand-grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And it's a different way of thinking about this. I wanted to ask you, Rohidas, and I will read out and quote what you have on Commitment 6 of ICMM's position statement. And you say that companies should enable benefit sharing that reflects and is aligned with indigenous peoples' aspirations, that benefit sharing should be equitably distributed and facilitate positive outcomes that extend beyond the life of operations. So I do hear that we do have a challenge, but it seems to me that there is agreement in the principles. But I wanted to ask you, do you have some examples of successful benefit sharing or co-equity, co-ownership models that have worked out for our CMM members?
We do, Dimitrios, and just to say that, Hindu, I'm so grateful to you for holding us to account, as you always do, my sister. On this one, though, you will have to agree with me that the ICMM position statement doesn't just have UNDRIP and FPIC in the front, it's the first paragraph of the first page of our position statement, talks about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which is the framework that we are guided by, and the principle of free, prior, and informed consent, which is the obligation of states to obtain before mining activity takes place. So I'm 100% with you. That is non-negotiable at the front and center of our approach. And actually, Dimitrios, one of the best examples of how you put that in practice comes from one of our members, BHP, whose operations in Canada are guided by a plan for Indigenous engagement, where they have taken UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and structured their whole plan around that framework to really embed the principles into how they ensure the economic participation of Indigenous people in a fair, equitable way. A couple of specific sites that I think really do stand out here. One would be the Gove mine in Australia that's operated by Rio Tinto, where they're mining for bauxite, which is the key ingredient to make aluminium. But in the next few years, that bauxite mining will finish. And already from now, they are partnering with, in a three-party relationship with Indigenous communities and with the state to plan for the future transition of those communities and that land into something that lasts well beyond the operation of the mine. And here's what's really important about this, because it gets to what Hindu was saying. This does not just see Indigenous peoples as a stakeholder. It recognizes them as landowners, as economic agents, and with rights. And that's the basis for the relationship that they're forming around the Gove mine to make sure that there is a sustainable economic benefit sharing agreement well past the life of the mine. And Dimitrios, just one existing example, I would say people really are keen to understand how to do this well, I would say comes from the Sullivan mine in Canada, where Teck Resources worked very hard with their Indigenous partners through every stage of the mine life to make sure that this community, which is today dependent on the mine, transitions to a community that's much more linked to ecotourism in the area, including through things like a ski resort that Teck as a company has helped create. What's also really nice is that they've been able to build a 2-megawatt solar farm on the site of the land using the infrastructure from the old mine, which is now providing both energy, jobs, and access for the Indigenous communities on whose lands that mining had taken place. So Dimitrios, a few really good examples that take the principles of UNDRIP and FPIC into practice. But as I said, I hope my remarks, unfortunately, I cannot stand here and say to you that that is the norm. Some of these examples are the exception, and we have to work hard to make them the norm.
Thank you very much, Rohitas. Again, Canada, Australia, I think it fits with what Hindu was saying earlier, that you need a basis of legislation, strong legislation and recognition of Indigenous peoples at the country level. And I think the examples that you mentioned do have that. I wish that the next time we have a similar event, we can find examples where we can talk about this in the countries where we work, in Africa, in Latin America, and hopefully everyone who is participating in this meeting and in this conference can think about how we can do this more and more in our own countries. And I just wanted to come back to you, Jennifer, and ask you, so we heard about Canada, Australia, and we know that mining will go ahead. In fact, Rohitas mentioned that we have almost 25,000 companies mining around the world, thousands of mines, and many more will be needed. And if indeed there are good examples in Canada, in Australia, that we can point out of how Indigenous people's rights and the investments can work out together, the question I have is, do we have the right standards of how to do that? Is it possible to make sure that we have a clear way that we can apply across the world so that the mining can be done responsibly and sustainably? Especially, I think, one of the recurring themes, and with our colleagues, we're looking at a new project in Peru, where part of what the funding is going to be about is cleaning up the mess that was left from mines of a long time ago that were left there and still create problems in the environment. What do you feel about standards? What do you feel about what is it that can be done so that we can have a common way forward?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I want to reflect that the mining industry is, of course, not monolithic, and there are very, very different levels of adherence to national standards, international standards, and best practices. And I want to reflect that even though we have a much more robust conversation around mining and sustainability, water use has jumped 20%, 25%, waste has increased by 20% on a per volume basis in the mining sector as a whole. So we're actually not creating a more efficient mining industry. We are seeing no progress in overall land rehabilitation or curbing environmental damage. So although the narrative is indeed shifting, many of the practices are not being standardized. So it is very, very important that we promulgate, we adopt standards, but the accountability, the transparency, and the requirements associated with the delivery of those standards is where we actually need to focus now. Curbing environmental damage, managing for water consumption, the discharge, the waste management, these are really significant opportunities for an improved and a more durable mining sector. But we don't have the incentives yet right, which is why I point again to this need for a much strengthened view of the landscape level planning in order to manage for site mitigation as well as the closure. And right now we've got a long duration. I guess it's taking somewhere between 10 and 15 years for most mines to go from siting to operation. That's a tremendous opportunity to do planning right, if we really think about it carefully. I want to just end on one other area. We need the siting guidelines, we need the tools for siting, but we also need the buyers and the market to recognize and differentiate the performance. At the WRI Polski Energy Center, large buyer demand is one of the 6 themes that we are going to be building out over this next few years. And part of the challenge is the traceability and the ability for the market to recognize and reward high performance. We need a race to the top. We don't need the lowest economic cost. But those minerals today are not labeled. There is no ability to trace those. And until the market can recognize it, we will continue to see these kinds of inefficiencies in the mining sector.
No, thank you very much, Jennifer. And I appreciate that at the end of the day, money talks, and making sure that the buyers of metals and minerals can feel responsible in the way the whole supply chain has worked makes a lot of sense. And Rohitesh, turning back to you, we talked about the importance of landscape planning, consulting with communities, making sure that they have a share of the benefits when operations start. And we talked about the need to think about what happens when we close the mine, how can we restore the environment, how can we make sure that we take into account what Hindu mentioned as the 7 generations to come. Do you have any views on how IACMM is thinking about this, and what is a good practice? Why is this so important? How is this taken into account among your members?
Thanks, Dimitris. Just building off the last question you asked around standards, I fully agree with what Jennifer said, and the premise of your question, which is that unless a large portion of those 25,000 companies are operating responsibly, then everything we're talking about today will not become the norm, which means that people and the planet will continue to suffer. And so our challenge has to be collectively, how do we make it the norm that responsible mining is the way things are done? And Jennifer's right to say that currently customers don't show and give a market signal that they're willing to pay for a more responsibly produced mined product. I guess this is called green premiums. There is no green premium as it is right now for responsible production. And if we don't fix that problem, too many people will use the economic incentive to continue to produce in a less than responsible way. And I think that's unacceptable. At the same time, we do need a globally consistent framework, as you're saying, Dimitrios, that any mine producing any commodity anywhere in the world can follow to demonstrate that they're a responsible actor. Because on that basis, you can then do a green premium and you can do traceability. That does not exist today, but we hope within the next 12 months, one such standard will be available. We're currently in a process to consolidate 4 of the most widely used voluntary standards of responsible mining: the ICMM principles, the World Gold Council, Mining Association of Canada, and Coppermark. Between us, we have hundreds of mines, and we're bringing them together into a global system, which most importantly will have an independent multi-stakeholder board, because this cannot and should not be controlled by the mining industry. It needs all parts of society to come together and have an equal say at the table for what is in the standard and how it is applied, and importantly, how there is governance around the application of that standard. So the second public consultation on that will go live later this year. I encourage everybody to participate in that. And by early next year, we hope that there is this global consolidated standard for responsible mining that can be used by any mine producing any commodity anywhere in the world. So Dimitrios, I think that is the piece of the puzzle that's been missing, that hopefully we will now be able to have by next year. And then we can really collectively up the pressure on everybody to say anything short of what a good practice under that standard is should be unacceptable, or over as a steady state. People may need some time to come into that. I appreciate that, because some operators are coming from a low base, but we have to set that global standard and then hold everybody accountable to it.
Thank you very much, Rohitesh. So our last question to the panel comes back to you, Hindu. And I have to say, I was really intrigued and found extremely interesting your approach that we need to find a way to make sure that indigenous peoples can be heard in the boards of the mining companies. So here's the question. If you were in the board of a mining company and you were thinking and discussing about what would be a good way to think about how do we close down a mine, and how to work with indigenous peoples on closing a mine properly, what is it that you would be insisting on in that case?
So firstly, I will insist on what Jennifer said earlier. No-go zone is no-go zone. Because indigenous peoples have indigenous peoples in voluntary isolations. We have a sacred area. And those places have a lot of minerals. But for us, it is no-go zone. In any board, like if it is no, it is no. You do not negotiate. You do not try to talk. Like you have just to understand. When they say no, it has to be clear. And I think the second thing is, we hear about many companies, many initiatives. They are all doing their best, of course, but they are doing in silo. And this is not going to work. And this is a big recommendation I'm giving to this room, who have government representatives, who have financial people working with the UN, working with the community, who have my indigenous brothers and sisters here in the room. Let's get out from this conference with a concrete next step that we need a global treaty who can help all the company to take the responsibility on one. And those are designed by government. So government are there. You have to really set up how the equity, justice, inclusiveness, transparency, accountability to be into the just transition critical minerals. And that have to be a concrete way. I don't want to be a checking box of the opening panel. And I think you don't want to be also. So I hope that really will move us to a concrete step. And coming to, yes, after the mining, what we can do. We have to design and think about it before the mining. Because if you already damage, before to come say like, okay, how we can treat it, this is too late. You have to think about how you can restore it, how you can close it from the beginning. And this is called preparation of the loss and damage. When you have losses, you have to pay the damage that you have. And we already have so many materials, and we need to think about that in a proper way, in an active way. For indigenous peoples, you come, you go, whatever years, it is still our home. It is still our territories. Even if it is sick, because you put the mineral there, it is our home. So we need to take care about it. And it is also the home of our knowledge, because our knowledge are based on this area. So that's why, from the beginning, I do not allow them, if I'm in the board, to think about it after. And let me close by this. All what we are talking about it is generating millions and billions. So these millions and billions have to ensure a direct access finance for indigenous peoples from the beginning, because we always think about 7th generation. So that can help us to think ahead for you. And we are not asking this money as charity. We are asking for the right to really help clean the mess that, sorry about the wording, you are going to do in our land. So we need this direct access finance to be shared. And we know the money is there. And we know we can manage this money as we are protecting the land, we are protecting the resources, we can manage this money. So these have to be set up from the beginning, and then after all these minerals extracted, we can be all happy we are restoring it in a right way. That needs to happen. So indigenous people rights is not negotiables. It's essential for the climate change solutions. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me, again, thank you, Rohitesh, for connecting and for your keynote remarks and your frankness and your openness to discuss this with us. Jennifer, really appreciate your ideas and sharing the work that WRI has been doing, and we're looking forward to continue to develop some of these things. We certainly have to find ways to break through into this premium pricing for metals and minerals that have been produced in the right way. And Hindu, a big thanks to you for taking the big responsibility of being a voice for indigenous peoples. Thank you all very much in this panel. To close this event, let me invite at the podium our Vice President, Mr. Guang Chen, for his closing remarks. Oh, I'm sorry. I understand that we have another intervention in between, which is a recorded video from the UK's Special Envoy on nature and, let me get this right. So it's the UK's representative, and I will find it in my notes for sure. Okay, so Miss Ruth Davis, who is the UK Special Representative for Nature. So let's play the video, please, and we can take off the stage.
I'm delighted to be able to make a few remarks at this opening session of the World Bank Land Conference today, even if I cannot be with you in person. As the UK Government's Special Representative on Nature, I recognise the critical role secure land and forest tenure rights play in protecting nature, in climate mitigation, and supporting the livelihoods of millions of people who depend on land and nature. In the coming decades, competition for land is expected to increase each year, driven by rising demand for food, land degradation, urban expansion, and infrastructure development. And so the need for effective systems to govern access to land and clarify and protect all legitimate tenure rights will become ever more important. The UK is a proud sponsor of this conference because we recognise the scale and urgency of the challenge facing land systems. We need to use moments like this to support collaboration between communities, governments and international organisations that can secure tenure rights and unlock investments and jobs. The UK's Global Land Governance Programme aims to increase secure land and property rights for all and ensure governance structures are more inclusive. Our land facility will support coordinated action between governments and donors, leveraging greater development assistance on the land governance agenda. This conference has also particular significance as we look towards COP30 later this year in Brazil, with the opportunity of mobilising new commitments on forest tenure rights, including a second global donor forest tenure pledge. I wish you well in your discussions this week and hope you can use these to develop a clear agenda in your own countries and globally to strengthen land governance, promote prosperity and protect nature. Thank you.
So after this interventions from our key partners on land issues, let me now turn to our Vice President for Infrastructure, Mr. Guang Chen. Guang brings more than 30 years of experience with development, and he knows the opportunities and the challenges of doing land development right. So Guang, for your inspiration to our colleagues as they move with the conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitris. A round of applause for distinguished panelists for a very stimulating conversation, and of course for your passionate appeal to the audience and to our partners. And also welcome again for everyone joining us today here or virtually for this land conference. I'm just going to keep it brief before lunch. Just 3 key takeaways from this conversation that we have. First, I think we all recognize land system is essential to unlock jobs, unlock growth, and which is the mission of the World Bank Group, which is eradicate poverty, promote shared prosperity on a livable planet. Without a proper land management system, we cannot make that happen. Second, I think this panel has a lot of discussion on how land system can play a crucial role in scale up energy access, addressing the need of critical minerals. We need urgent investment to secure land right, avoid land dispute, and ensure landholders are benefiting from energy projects. And finally, land systems have to be strengthened to close the infrastructure gap. If you look at across the infrastructure sector, from energy to transport to water, all the matches that we have depends on better access to land. And the conversation, this panel discussion, just highlight this one particular aspect on mining, critical minerals, and indigenous people's rights. But the same principle can apply to almost every sector infrastructure. Think about building an access road across indigenous land. How do you manage the property right of the people in that area? Think about the world need to continue to grow food to meet the need of the population growth. And how do you create that kind of a space for continue for land developments and also in our all phase of agriculture growth. This is why at the World Bank Group, we are investing something like close to $3 billion in strengthened land system in 31 countries, and we'll continue to do more. And our land project are securing existing land tenure, including for women's, digitizing land system, facilitating resilient land use, and enabling access to land for infrastructures. But also equally important in parallel, we are continue work hard to strengthen our knowledge platforms and facilitating experience sharing among our partners, about our client government, and I think the land conference, which has been going on for 20 years, is one important platform of these knowledge engagements. In closing, I just really want to thank our panelists and also thank all of you for joining us today. And I think working together, we can maximize land sector's contribution to all phases of infrastructure development and all growth and job creations. But it's also equally important, I want to take this opportunity to thank our champion sponsors for the 2025 World Bank Land Conference. Without them, this would not have happened. And these are the government of United Kingdom through the FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and the government of Canada through the Global Affairs Canada. I also want to thank our other event sponsors, namely ProGreens, the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, GIZ, the government of Netherlands, the government of Republic of Korea, the Emerald Real Estate Solutions, Landesa, and Leica Geosystems. I think together with our partners, We have organized a very exciting agenda in the coming 2.5 days, and also for our future engagements in this 2025 World Bank Land Conference. We look forward to engage with all of you and enjoy your stay in Washington for those who travel here. And we look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you very much. Thank you.